The reason you answer slowly in English may not be your vocabulary, it may be the translation happening inside your head. Someone asks you a simple question, but your mind first changes it into your language, builds the answer there, translates it back into English, checks the grammar, and only then tries to speak. That is why your English feels late. Today you will learn 7 powerful ways to make English travel directly from meaning to your mouth, so you can answer faster, think more naturally, and speak without translating every sentence first. Do not just listen. Answer the examples aloud, because direct English is built through response, not silence. Chapter 1. Stop translating words and start connecting English directly to meaning. The biggest reason many learners answer slowly in English is not because they do not know enough words. It is because every word is taking an unnecessary journey through another language before it reaches the mouth. You hear a question in English, then your mind quietly translates it into your first language. You create the answer there. Then you translate that answer back into English. Then you check the grammar, then you search for a better word, then you finally speak. That entire process may take only a few seconds, but in a real conversation, those few seconds feel enormous. The other person is waiting, your heart begins beating faster. You start thinking, why am I so slow? Then pressure makes the translation process even slower. This is why the first thing you must change is not your vocabulary. It is the connection between English and meaning. Think about the word water. When you hear that word, do not imagine a translation written inside your head. Imagine the glass. Imagine drinking it. Imagine feeling thirsty. Let the English word connect directly to the thing itself. Now think about the word tired. Do not search for the equivalent word in another language. Imagine yourself coming home after a long day, dropping onto the bed, closing your eyes, and feeling your body become heavy. Now think about expensive. Imagine looking at a simple pair of shoes and seeing a price that surprises you. That is what direct English looks like. The word connects to an image, a feeling, a situation, or an experience, not to another word. This matters because your first language does not usually work through translation. When someone says door in your own language, you do not translate it before understanding what a door is. You understand immediately. The sound and the meaning are already connected. English must slowly develop the same type of connection. This is where real thinking in English begins. Not by forcing yourself to create complicated thoughts, not by trying to sound like a native speaker, but by creating thousands of small direct connections. Look around your room. Do not silently name everything twice. See the chair and think, chair. See the window and think, window. See your phone and think, phone. Then go beyond objects. Look at the window and think, it looks bright outside. Notice your desk and think, I need to clean this later. Pick up your cup and think, I need some water. Look at your phone and think, I should reply to that message. Now something important is happening. English is no longer sitting beside your first language waiting to be translated. English is beginning to connect directly to your life. That is the connection you need if you want answers to come faster. Let me give you another example. Imagine someone asks, what are you doing this evening? A translation-dependent mind may hear the question, convert it into the first language, think of the answer there, then rebuild it in English. But a direct English mind hears this evening and immediately connects it to tonight. Maybe you see yourself going home. Maybe you imagine dinner. Maybe you remember a task. Then the answer begins. I'm going to stay home tonight. Or, I have some work to finish. Or, I'm meeting a friend later. The answer comes from the situation, not from translation. That is exactly what you want to build. Now here is an important mistake many learners make. They believe they must stop translation completely from the first day. That creates unnecessary frustration. Translation is not evil, it helped you begin learning. The problem starts when your mind refuses to speak without it. Think of translation as a bridge. A bridge is useful when you need to cross from one side to another, but imagine building a house in the middle of that bridge and refusing to leave. That is what many learners accidentally do. They learn English through translation, and years later they still believe every English thought must travel across the same bridge. Your job now is to begin creating direct roads. Some words already have those roads. You probably do not translate hello. You probably do not translate thank you. You may not translate yes, no, okay, or sorry. Why? Because you have heard and used them so many times that the connection became direct. That proves your brain is capable of direct English. You simply need to expand that system. Take common verbs. Eat, go, come, wait, sit, stand, open, close, need, want, like, know. Do not study them only as dictionary entries. Connect each word to an action. Stand up when you think stand. Open the door when you think open. Pick up your phone and think, I need this. Look at something you enjoy and think, I like this. Physical experience strengthens the meaning. Then begin combining these direct words into direct sentences. I need water. I want to rest. I like this place. I know the answer. I need to go. These may look very simple, but simple direct English is far more valuable than complicated English that must be translated every time. Remember this carefully. Fluency grows from fast access, not just large knowledge. You may know 10,000 English words, but if you need several seconds to translate every thought, conversation will still feel difficult. Another learner may know fewer words but access them immediately. That learner often sounds more fluent. So stop asking only, how many English words do I know? Start asking, how quickly can I reach the English I already know? That is a much better question. Now let us make this practical. For the next 7 days, create what I call a direct English zone. Choose 10 minutes every day. During those 10 minutes, do not deliberately translate. Simply observe your surroundings and think in simple English. If you are walking, the road is busy. That car is moving slowly. It looks hot outside. I need to turn left. If you are cooking, I need a plate. The water is boiling. This smells good. I think it needs more salt. If you are working, I need to finish this first. I forgot something. This is taking longer than I expected. I'll do that later. Your sentences do not need to be impressive. They need to be direct, and here is the most important rule. When you do not know a word, do not immediately run back to translation. Try to explain the idea using English you already know. Suppose you forget curtain. Instead of translating it, think, the thing that covers the window. Suppose you forget charger. Think, the thing I use to give power to my phone. Suppose you forget receipt. Think, the paper they give me after I pay. Every time you do this, you teach your mind something powerful. I can stay inside English even when one word is missing. That is the beginning of real independence. There is another powerful exercise. Close your eyes and imagine a place you know well. Maybe your kitchen, maybe your bedroom, maybe your workplace. Now mentally walk through that place using only simple English. The door is on the left. There is a table near the window. My bag is usually here. I keep my clothes in that cupboard. You are connecting English to space, memory, and experience. These connections are much stronger than memorizing isolated translations, and over time, something beautiful begins to happen. You see an object and the English word comes first. You experience a feeling and an English phrase appears automatically. You think about your plans and part of the thought arrives in English before you even try. That is the moment when translation starts losing its control. Not because you fought against your first language, but because English finally built its own connections. And this is exactly what you need to understand before we move forward. You do not stop translating by telling yourself, stop translating. You stop translating by giving English a faster route to meaning. The more often English connects directly to what you see, feel, do, and experience, the less your mind needs the old bridge. So starting today, stop treating English as a code that must always be converted. Let English touch real life directly. See it, feel it, use it, respond with it. Because the moment English begins connecting directly to meaning is the moment your answers begin coming faster, your hesitation begins shrinking, and your mind starts discovering that it does not need to translate everything before your voice is allowed to speak. Chapter 2. Build ready English responses so your mind stops starting from zero. One of the biggest reasons you translate before answering is simple. Your mind has no ready path to follow. Someone asks you, "What did you do today?" and your brain starts building everything from nothing. First you think about the meaning, then you create the answer in your first language, then you search for English vocabulary, then you arrange the grammar, and only after all of that do you try to speak. That is far too much work for a real conversation. Fluent speakers do something very different. They do not build every answer from zero. They use familiar response patterns. Think about your own native language. You probably use the same kinds of openings again and again without noticing. I think the main reason is, for me, usually, it depends. The problem is, what happened was, you do not create these structures from the beginning every time. They are already available. English must become the same. The goal is not to memorize entire speeches. The goal is to build ready beginnings that give your mind somewhere to start, because starting is often the hardest part. Once the first few words come out, the rest of the answer becomes much easier. Imagine someone asks, "Why are you learning English?" Without a ready pattern, you may begin translating. But if your mind already knows, "One of the main reasons I am learning English is," then the door is already open. Now you only need to finish the idea. One of the main reasons I am learning English is because I want to communicate more confidently at work. Or, one of the main reasons I am learning English is because I want more opportunities. Or, one of the main reasons I am learning English is because I want to travel and speak without fear. Same beginning, different answer. That is the power. You are not memorizing one fixed sentence, you are building a speaking frame. And frames reduce translation because your mind does not need to construct the entire response from nothing. Now imagine another question. What do you think about working from home? You could begin, "I think it depends on the person." Then continue, "Because some people focus better at home, while others need an office environment." Or, "Personally, I think it has many advantages." Then continue naturally. Notice what happened. The beginning gave your mind time. While your mouth was saying, "Personally, I think," your brain was already preparing the next idea. This is one of the hidden secrets of natural speaking. Good speakers often begin with language that is already automatic while the rest of the thought is still forming. That is why they seem fast. They are not always thinking faster than you. They simply have more ready language available. You can build this too. Start with common conversation categories. For opinions, practice, "I think," "in my opinion," "for me," "the way I see it." For reasons, the main reason is. One reason is, "I think this happens because." For experiences, "In my experience, one time I remember when." For preferences, "I prefer," "I usually choose," "If I had to choose, I would." For uncertainty, "I'm not completely sure but," "I would probably say," "That's difficult to answer but." For examples, for example, one good example is, "To give you an example." These phrases are incredibly useful because they allow you to stay inside English. The moment a question comes, instead of translating, your mind reaches for a familiar pattern. Then the answer grows from there. But there is an important warning. Do not memorize 20 complete answers and repeat them like a machine. That will not create real fluency. You need flexible patterns, not rigid scripts. For example, take the question, "What do you normally do in the evening?" Use one opening. "Usually I." Today, "Usually I finish my work and spend some time relaxing." Tomorrow, "Usually I have dinner with my family and then watch something." Another day, "Usually I try to prepare for the next morning before I go to bed." Same structure, different meaning. That is how automatic language becomes flexible. And flexibility is what removes translation. Now let me show you a powerful exercise. Choose 10 questions you hear often. Not difficult questions, real questions. What do you do? Where are you from? What did you do yesterday? What are you doing this weekend? What kind of movies do you like? What do you think about social media? What is one thing you want to improve? What do you usually do in your free time? What is something you enjoy? What are your plans for the future? For each question, create only the first 5 to 8 words of the answer, not the whole response. For example, "What do you do?" At the moment I. "What did you do yesterday?" Yesterday was quite busy because. What do you think about social media? I think social media can be useful, but what are your plans for the future? One of my biggest goals is, then practice answering differently each time. This trains your mind to recognize the question and immediately activate an English starting pattern. Question, pattern, meaning, response. That pathway becomes faster with repetition, and something important begins to disappear. Translation. Another useful method is what I call the response bank. Create a small list of phrases you can use in many conversations, not hundreds. Start with 20. Phrases like, "That makes sense," "I understand what you mean," "I agree with that," "I'm not sure about that," "That's interesting," "I've never thought about it that way," "It depends on the situation," "That reminds me of something," "The main thing is," "What I mean is." These phrases are valuable because conversation is not only about long answers. Sometimes fluency is simply knowing how to react without going silent. Imagine someone tells you, I started exercising every morning and I feel much better. A learner who translates may become silent while searching for a response, but someone with a response bank can immediately say, "That's great, I've been thinking about doing something similar." Now the conversation stays alive. The response came directly. No complicated translation was needed. That is real conversational fluency. You should also practice question recognition. Sometimes learners translate because they are focusing too much on every individual word. Instead, learn to recognize common question shapes as complete patterns. What do you think about? Your mind should recognize opinion. What would you do if? Your mind should recognize imaginary situation. Why did you? Reason. How often do you? Frequency. Have you ever? Experience. Once you recognize the type of question, the type of response becomes easier. You do not need to translate every word. You only need to understand the intention. This is a major shift. Real listening is not always word-by-word decoding. Often it is pattern recognition, and when your mind recognizes patterns quickly, your answers begin faster. Now let us make the practice stronger. Ask yourself one question. What do you normally do on Sunday? Give yourself no more than 2 seconds before beginning with a ready pattern. Usually then continue. Next question. What is something you want to change about your routine? One thing I want to change is, continue. Next. Do you think money makes people happy? I think it depends because, continue. You are teaching your mouth to begin before your translation habit wakes up. At first, the answer may feel basic. That is completely fine. Your first goal is directness. Complexity can grow later. This is where many learners make a mistake. They become embarrassed by simple English. They think, I should know a better way to say this. But simple English that comes directly is much more powerful than advanced English that takes 10 seconds to build. Imagine two learners. The first says, I think it depends on the person because everyone has different priorities. The second wants to say something more sophisticated, but spends 7 seconds translating and finally says nothing. Who communicated better? The first learner, every time, because language exists to connect people, not to impress an imaginary examiner inside your head. You also need to create ready phrases for difficult moments, when you need thinking time. Let me think about that for a second. That's a good question. I've never thought about that before. When you need to clarify, do you mean, are you asking about? When you lose your thought, what I was trying to say is, let me explain that another way. When you disagree, I see your point, but I understand that although I think, these phrases protect you from translation because they give your brain time without forcing the conversation to stop. Think of them as small bridges. While you cross the bridge, your next idea is forming. And the more often you use these bridges, the more automatic they become. Another powerful practice is substitution. Take one sentence pattern. One reason I like underscore 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 is because underscore underscore underscore. Now fill it with different ideas. One reason I like mornings is because everything feels quiet. One reason I like this city is because there are many opportunities. One reason I like learning English is because I can communicate with more people. One reason I like walking is because it clears my mind. You are teaching one structure to carry many meanings. This is much more effective than memorizing hundreds of disconnected sentences. Fluency grows when familiar structures become flexible tools. The structure remains ready, only the meaning changes. That is exactly how your first language works. You have patterns you have used thousands of times. You simply place new information inside them. Now you are building the same system in English. So for the next week, give yourself one challenge. Every day choose 5 common questions. For each question, begin with a ready English pattern within 2 or 3 seconds. Do not translate the entire answer first. Start, build, continue. If the answer becomes messy, simplify it. If you forget a word, describe it. But do not return to silence just because the perfect sentence is not ready. Your mind needs to learn that an English question can trigger an English response immediately. That is the habit you are building. And one day something will happen that may surprise you. Someone will ask, "What do you think?" And before you have time to translate, your mouth will say, "I think the main thing is." Someone will ask, "What did you do yesterday?" And your mouth will begin, "Yesterday was actually quite busy." You will not have planned it. You will not have translated it. The English pattern will simply appear. That is when you know your speaking system is changing. Because fluent answers do not always begin with perfect ideas. Very often, they begin with familiar language that gives the idea time to arrive. So stop forcing your mind to invent English from zero every time. Build your response patterns. Make your openings automatic. Give your thoughts somewhere to land. Because when the beginning of the answer is already waiting inside you, translation loses one of its greatest advantages. And your English finally begins moving before hesitation has time to stop it. Chapter 3. Use simple English first, so translation never gets the chance to take control. One of the biggest reasons learners translate inside their heads is not because they know too little English. It is because they are trying to say too much, too perfectly, too quickly. A simple idea appears in the mind, but instead of expressing it with the English you already control, you start searching for the most advanced version of that idea. You think, there must be a better word. Then, maybe this sentence sounds too basic. Then, how would I say this naturally? And suddenly the conversation is no longer a conversation. It has become a private translation exam inside your head. This is where hesitation begins. You are not struggling because your idea is impossible. You are struggling because you refuse to say the simple version first. Let me show you what this looks like. Imagine someone asks you, "What did you think about the meeting?" Your real thought is something like, "The meeting was useful, but it was too long and some parts were unnecessary." That is already enough. But a learner who wants to sound impressive may start building a much more complicated answer mentally. The meeting was relatively productive, although certain portions of the discussion could perhaps have been more concise. Now the brain becomes overloaded. The grammar feels heavier, the vocabulary becomes slower, translation enters, and the answer gets delayed. Instead, say, "I think the meeting was useful, but it was too long." Then add, "Some parts were important, but I think we spent too much time on small details." Clear, natural, direct, and most importantly, spoken. This is the habit I want you to build. Say the easiest true version first, not the smartest version, not the most advanced version, not the sentence you think will impress someone. The easiest true version. This one habit can dramatically reduce translation because simple English is much closer to the language your mind can already access directly. Imagine you want to say, "I have recently become more selective about the people I spend time with because I realized certain relationships were affecting my peace." That may be the exact thought in your mind, but if that sentence feels too heavy in the moment, simplify it. "I'm more careful about who I spend time with now." Then continue. "I realized that some people were making me feel stressed." Same meaning, less pressure, more fluency. You have not made your idea weak. You have made your communication stronger. This is where many learners confuse fluency with complexity. They believe fluent English must sound advanced, but real fluency is not the ability to produce the most complicated sentence. Real fluency is the ability to express what you mean without getting trapped inside your own head. A fluent speaker can say a difficult idea simply. That is a strength. In fact, the ability to simplify is one of the most useful speaking skills you can develop. Because real conversations do not give you unlimited preparation time. You cannot always stop for 20 seconds and search for the perfect expression. Sometimes you must work with what is immediately available. That is not failure, that is communication. Think about a difficult idea like disappointment. You want to explain why you left a job. Maybe the full thought in your native language is complicated. Instead of translating the whole thing, start with, "I wasn't happy there anymore." Then, "The work itself was okay, but I didn't feel I was growing." Then, "So I decided to look for something different." Look at how naturally the meaning develops. One simple sentence creates the next. This is exactly how you should build answers. Do not wait until the complete answer is ready. Give the first piece, then the second, then the third. Your mouth does not need the entire paragraph before it can begin. This is important because translation usually takes control during the waiting period. The longer you wait, the more your first language starts building the answer for you. Then you become dependent on converting that completed thought back into English. So shorten the waiting period. Begin with a simple sentence. Suppose someone asks, "Why do you think people lose motivation?" You may have a complex opinion. Do not prepare at all. Start. "I think people lose motivation when they don't see progress." Now your brain has direction. Continue. "They keep working, but nothing seems to change." Then, after some time, they begin to feel that their effort is useless. You have just built a thoughtful answer without translating a complete paragraph first. And notice something else. The English is not childish, it is clear. That is the point. Simple English does not mean weak thinking. Never confuse those two things. Your ideas can be deep even when your language is simple. Some of the most powerful sentences in any language are simple. I was afraid. I made the wrong choice. I needed to change. I didn't know what to do. I learned something important. These are not weak sentences, they are direct sentences. And direct language is easier for both the speaker and the listener. Now let us talk about something that causes unnecessary translation, trying to match your native language sentence exactly. This is a huge trap. You create a beautiful sentence in your first language, then you believe English must carry the exact same structure, word order, emotional tone, and level of detail. It does not. You are not translating a document. You are having a conversation. Your job is to carry the meaning, not the exact sentence. This changes everything. Imagine the thought in your first language means, I had been planning to go there for a long time, but because several unexpected things happened, I kept delaying it until finally I went last weekend. You do not need to force that exact structure into English. Say, I wanted to go there for a long time, but something always came up. Finally, I went last weekend. Same story, much easier. Your listener understands you perfectly. That is successful communication. This is why you need to stop asking, how do I translate this sentence? Start asking, how can I express this idea with English I already know? Those are completely different questions. The first question keeps you dependent on translation. The second question creates a speaker. Let us practice that mindset. You want to say, I am mentally exhausted because I have had too many responsibilities recently. Maybe mentally exhausted does not come immediately. Say, I've had too much to do lately and I feel really tired. You want to say, I regret not taking advantage of that opportunity. You cannot remember take advantage of. Say, I wish I had used that opportunity when I had the chance. You want to say, the situation became more complicated than I originally expected. Say, it became much more difficult than I expected. You see what is happening? You are keeping the meaning alive. And when meaning stays alive, conversation stays alive. This is also why vocabulary size alone does not create fluency. A learner may know 10 different words for an idea but still freeze because they are searching for the best one. Another learner may know only one simple phrase and use it immediately. The second learner often communicates better. You need to develop what I call available English. Available English is the English you can reach under real speaking conditions, not the words you recognize while reading, not the expressions you understand in a video, not the grammar you can solve on a worksheet, the English you can use immediately. That is your real speaking vocabulary. And your goal is to make that available English larger and faster. One way to do this is to practice reducing difficult sentences. Take a complex thought and say it 3 ways. For example, I was reluctant to accept the offer because I wasn't convinced it was the right decision. Now simplify it. I wasn't sure I should accept the offer. Simplify again. I didn't know if it was a good idea. All 3 work. Now your mind has options. That is powerful because translation often happens when you believe there is only one correct way to express something. There is almost never only one way. There are usually many. Suppose you forget, I'm looking forward to it. You can say, I'm excited about it, or I'm happy it's going to happen. Suppose you forget, I'm disappointed. You can say, I'm not happy about what happened. Suppose you forget, I misunderstood. You can say, I understood it the wrong way. This flexibility keeps you inside English, and every time you stay inside English, you weaken the translation habit. Another exercise I want you to use is the 5-word start. When someone asks a question, do not try to build the whole answer. Just find the first few words. What do you think about learning online? Start. I think it can be, then continue. What was your childhood like? Start. When I was younger, then continue. What is something you want to change? Start. One thing I want to. Then continue. The beginning creates momentum. Momentum is important, because once your mouth starts producing English, your brain often follows. But when you wait for perfect English, your brain starts producing translation instead. So remember this rule: start before your entire answer is ready. You are allowed to think while speaking. You are allowed to build the answer sentence by sentence. That is not bad speaking. That is real speaking. Native speakers do it constantly. They start an idea, pause, change direction, simplify, add an example, correct themselves, and continue. Conversation is alive. It is not a prepared essay. You must stop treating every answer like something that needs to be perfect before it leaves your mouth. There is another reason simple English is so powerful. It creates emotional calm. When you know you are allowed to speak simply, the pressure drops. You stop thinking, I need to prove my English is good. Instead, you think, I just need to explain what I mean. That small mental shift makes speaking much easier, because now your attention moves away from performance and back toward communication. And when your attention is on communication, translation becomes less attractive. You stop asking whether the English is impressive. You start asking whether the meaning is clear. That is exactly the mindset you need. From today, when a difficult idea appears in your mind, do not immediately translate it. Break it, simplify it, say the first clear sentence, then build from there. Your goal is not to make every answer sound advanced. Your goal is to make English arrive fast enough to use. Because the real enemy of fluency is not simple English. It is silence created by overthinking. And once you learn to trust simple English, something important begins to happen. You answer faster. You hesitate less. You stop searching for perfect words. You stop rebuilding every thought in another language. And little by little, your mind discovers a new way of speaking. Not translation first, English second, but meaning first, English immediately after. Chapter 4. Think in English during ordinary moments until English starts appearing on its own. If you only use English when you sit down to study, your brain will continue treating English like a subject, something you open, something you practice, something you finish, then something you close. But real fluency begins when English stops living only inside study time and starts appearing inside ordinary life. This is where many learners make a mistake. They say, I want to think in English, and then they immediately try to think about deep ideas, difficult problems, future plans, emotions, philosophy, and complicated conversations. That is too much. Thinking in English does not begin with complicated thoughts. It begins with ordinary moments. You wake up and think, I'm still tired. You look outside and think, it looks cloudy today. You cannot find your phone and think, where did I put it? You make tea and think, the water is ready. You open your laptop and think, I need to finish this first. These small thoughts may look too easy, but this is exactly how direct English begins, because now English is connecting to your real life, not to a translation exercise, not to a vocabulary list, not to a grammar page, to life. And once English begins attaching itself to real situations, your dependence on translation starts becoming weaker. Think about how your first language became automatic. You did not sit down as a child and say, today I will think in my language for 30 minutes. Your language became automatic because it surrounded ordinary experiences. Food, people, movement, questions, feelings, objects, problems, plans. English needs some of that same repetition. You may not be able to surround yourself with English all day, but you can create small English moments deliberately. That is enough to begin changing the system. Here is one of the simplest exercises you can use. Choose 5 minutes every morning. During those 5 minutes, describe your morning only in English. You wake up. I need 5 more minutes. You stand up. I should open the window. You look at the time. I'm a little late. You walk into the kitchen. I need something to drink. You prepare breakfast. I don't feel very hungry. That is thinking in English. You are not translating a speech. You are allowing English to appear naturally beside experience. And the more often experience and English appear together, the stronger that direct connection becomes. Now notice something important. Do not demand perfect grammar during this exercise. If you stop every 10 seconds to ask, is this sentence grammatically perfect? You will return to analysis. The purpose here is connection. See something. Think something in English. Do something. Think something in English. Feel something. Name the feeling in English. That is the rhythm. Another powerful method is to create English zones during your day. For example, decide that whenever you are walking, you will think in English for 5 minutes. You see someone crossing the street, that person is in a hurry. You see traffic. The road is really busy today. You notice the weather, it feels warmer than yesterday. You remember something, I forgot to send that message. You notice a shop, I've never been inside that place. These are real thoughts. And because they are real, your mind learns them differently from memorized textbook sentences. Textbook English often feels like information. Life English feels like communication. That difference matters. You can create another English zone while cooking. Think, I need another plate. This is too hot. I think I added too much. I should turn this down. This smells really good. Again, nothing complicated, but direct. That is what you want. The goal is not to prove how advanced your English is while making dinner. The goal is to stop requiring another language for every small thought. Now here is where this becomes more powerful. Do not only describe what is happening, predict what will happen next. I'm going to finish this in 10 minutes. I think it might rain later. I'll probably call him tonight. Then remember the past. I forgot to do this yesterday. I spoke to her earlier. That was easier than I expected. Now English is beginning to cover 3 directions of thought: what is happening, what happened, and what may happen. That is extremely useful because real conversation constantly moves between past, present, and future. You are practicing those movements without even sitting in a formal lesson. There is another exercise I strongly recommend. Use what I call the silent commentator method. Imagine there is a calm English voice inside your head describing your day like a documentary. You are getting ready to leave. He is looking for his keys. You sit down. He has finally found them. You walk outside. The street is quieter than usual. Or use first person. I'm looking for my keys. I found them. I'm leaving now. I think I have everything. The exact format does not matter. What matters is that English becomes connected to movement and situation. You can also use questions. Ask yourself simple questions in English. What am I doing right now? What do I need next? What am I thinking about? What am I worried about? What do I want to finish today? Then answer in English. Now you are not just thinking in English, you are creating mini conversations inside your own mind. This is incredibly useful because conversations are built from questions and responses. You are training that pattern all day. Question in English, answer in English, no translation in between. At first your answers may be short. Good, short direct English is exactly what you need. Now let me talk about something very important. You will sometimes reach a word you do not know. That moment is where your old translation habit will try to return. Suppose you are looking at something and cannot remember the English word. Your first instinct may be, what is this called in English? Then your first language appears. Then translation begins. Instead, pause and describe it. Maybe you cannot remember shelf. Think, the place where I keep books. You cannot remember lid. Think, the top part that closes this. You cannot remember remote control. Think, the thing I use to change the television. This is powerful because you are teaching yourself to solve language problems from inside English. That is exactly what fluent speakers do when a word disappears. They do not panic, they describe, they replace, they move around the missing word. This creates mental flexibility, and flexibility is one of the biggest differences between translated English and direct English. Translated English wants one exact word. Direct English asks, what else can I say? That question keeps you moving. You should also practice emotional thoughts in English, not only objects. Suppose you feel irritated. Think, that annoyed me. Suppose you feel uncertain. I'm not sure what to do. Suppose you are excited. I'm really looking forward to this. Suppose something surprises you. I didn't expect that. Suppose something disappoints you. That didn't go the way I hoped. Why is this important? Because many learners can describe objects in English but return immediately to their first language when emotions appear. Yet real conversations are full of emotions, opinions, reactions, preferences, disappointment, excitement, confusion, frustration. You need English to connect to those experiences too. Another very effective habit is thinking your decisions in English. You are deciding what to eat. I don't want that. I think I'll have something lighter. You are choosing what to wear. This one looks better. You are planning your work. I should do the difficult part first. You are deciding whether to go somewhere. I'm tired, but I think I should go. Now English is becoming part of decision making. That is powerful because speaking requires decision making constantly. Which idea should I say? Which word should I use? What should I explain next? The more comfortable English becomes inside small decisions, the easier it becomes inside conversation. Now let us take this even further. At the end of your day, spend 5 minutes reviewing your day in English. Do not write it first. Speak. Ask, what happened today? Then answer. Today was quite busy. I had to finish something in the morning. Later, I went out. I spoke to. One thing that surprised me was, one thing I could have done better was. This exercise connects English to memory, and memory is extremely important for conversation because people constantly ask, what did you do? What happened? How was your day? What did you think? Now those experiences have already been processed in English once, so when someone asks about them later, English is much easier to retrieve. That is another secret. If you regularly think about your life in English, conversations about your life become easier because the ideas already have English attached to them. You are not translating the memory for the first time while someone is waiting. You have already built the language. This is why daily thinking practice is so valuable. It quietly prepares your future conversations. Another method is the 1-minute English switch. Several times during the day, stop whatever you are doing and switch your inner language to English for exactly 1 minute. No preparation. Just switch. For 1 minute. What do I see? What do I hear? What do I need? What am I doing? What am I thinking? Then return to normal life. Do this 3 or 4 times a day. That is only a few minutes, but those minutes repeatedly remind your mind that English can appear anywhere. Over time, the switch becomes faster, and eventually you may not need to deliberately switch. English starts appearing automatically. This is exactly what you are trying to create. Do not measure success by asking, "Did I think in English all day?" That is unnecessary. Measure success by asking, "Did English appear directly more often today than before?" That is progress. Maybe yesterday you had 5 direct English thoughts. Today you had 20. Next month, English starts appearing during certain activities without effort. That is how the system develops, gradually, naturally, repeatedly. There is another trap to avoid. Do not translate your first language thoughts after they are already complete. For example, if a long complicated thought appears first in your native language, you may immediately try to convert the entire thing into English. That can become another translation exercise. Instead, restart the idea from meaning. Ask, "What is the simplest English version of what I mean?" Then build from there. Maybe the original thought is long. Your English version can be, "I don't think this is a good idea." Then, "There are too many things that could go wrong." Then, "I would rather wait." You are not copying the sentence structure. You are rebuilding the meaning directly in English. That is a much stronger skill. Remember, thinking in English does not mean translating every thought into English. It means allowing English to generate its own version of the thought. That difference is huge, and once you understand it, the practice becomes much easier. You do not need to sound exactly the same in both languages. You only need the meaning to remain true. This gives your English freedom. Now imagine doing this every day for 30 days. You describe your morning, you think during your walk, you make small decisions in English, you react emotionally in English, you review your day in English, you answer yourself in English. At first it feels deliberate, then familiar, then easier. Then one day something unexpected happens. You drop something and immediately think, "Seriously?" You see the weather and think, "It looks like rain." You remember a task and think, "I need to do that later." You did not translate. You did not decide to practice. English simply appeared. That is the beginning of automatic thinking. And once English starts appearing automatically inside ordinary life, speaking becomes much faster because conversation is no longer asking your brain to activate a language that only exists during study time. English is already awake. It is already moving through your day. It is already connected to your experiences. So do not wait until someone speaks to you before trying to activate English. Use English before the conversation begins. Use it when you wake up, when you walk, when you eat, when you wait, when you plan, when you remember, when you react. Let English quietly enter the ordinary parts of your life, because the day English becomes normal inside your ordinary moments is the day it starts becoming available inside extraordinary moments too. And that is when answering without translation stops feeling like a difficult technique and begins feeling like the natural way your mind speaks. Chapter 5. Use the 3-second response rule to break the translation habit. There is a very simple reason translation keeps controlling your English. You give it too much time. Someone asks you a question, and instead of beginning with the English you already know, you wait. You wait for the perfect word. You wait for the perfect grammar. You wait for the full answer. And during that waiting time, your first language quietly enters. First it translates the question, then it builds the answer. Then your mind tries to bring that answer back into English. By the time you speak, the moment already feels heavy. This is why I want you to build one very powerful habit. Begin your answer within 3 seconds, not after the whole sentence is ready, not after your mind has checked everything. Within 3 seconds, someone asks, "What did you do this morning?" 3, 2, 1. This morning I. That is enough. You have started. Now continue. I had breakfast, checked a few things, and then started working. The important part was not the complexity of the answer. The important part was that English began before translation took control. Now imagine another question. What is something you want to improve about yourself? Do not prepare a speech. 3, 2, 1. One thing I really want to improve is. Now your mind has direction. Maybe you say, one thing I really want to improve is the way I manage my time. Then you continue. Sometimes I start too many things at once, so I want to become more organized. You did not need the whole answer first. You only needed the first doorway. That is what the 3-second rule gives you, a doorway into English. The problem with waiting is that waiting feels safe, but it often makes speaking harder. You believe you are giving yourself time to prepare. In reality, you are giving overthinking time to grow. The first second is simple. The second brings doubt. The third brings grammar checking. The fourth brings translation. The fifth brings pressure. And suddenly you are standing there thinking, I know this answer, why can't I say it? You can say it, but your speaking system has been buried under too much preparation. This is why faster beginnings often create calmer answers. Not because speed is always better, but because beginning interrupts the old translation routine. Think of your mind like a door. If you open the English door quickly, English enters first. If you stand outside too long, your first language comes back and takes over the room. So your goal is not to answer perfectly in 3 seconds. Your goal is to start in 3 seconds. That difference matters. You are allowed to continue thinking after you begin. You are allowed to pause later. You are allowed to change direction. You are allowed to simplify. You are even allowed to say, let me think about that. But say it in English, because that keeps you inside English. Here is another example. Question: would you rather live in a big city or a quiet place? Many learners hear that question and immediately start translating both options. Instead, 3, 2, 1. I would probably choose a quiet place. Now continue. Because I like peaceful environments, although I would still want to be close to a city. That answer came naturally because the beginning was simple. You did not need to solve the entire response before opening your mouth. This is exactly how you should practice. Start with easy questions. What is your favorite food? What time do you usually wake up? What do you do after work? What kind of music do you like? Answer within 3 seconds. Then move to questions that require a little more thinking. What makes someone trustworthy? What is one habit you want to change? What is something people worry about too much? Would you rather have more money or more free time? Again, 3 seconds. Begin. If you do not know the full answer, use a bridge. That's an interesting question. I would probably say, for me the biggest thing is, I've never thought about that before, but these phrases are extremely valuable. Why? Because they allow your mouth to stay active while your mind develops the real answer. You are not buying time with silence. You are buying time with English. That is a major difference. Silence often invites translation. English filler phrases keep the English system active. You also need to understand that hesitation is not always caused by lack of knowledge. Sometimes hesitation is simply a habit. Your mind has learned. Question comes, stop, translate, prepare, speak. If you have repeated that pattern for years, it starts feeling normal. So you need to replace it with a new pattern. Question comes, begin in English, build while speaking. That is what the 3-second rule is doing. It is not just a speaking exercise. It is rewiring the order of your response. And order matters. You want English to enter earlier. Now let us make the exercise stronger. Take 10 questions. Do not write answers. Do not prepare. Read the first question and immediately count. 3, 2, 1. Start speaking. Do this for all 10. Then repeat the same 10 questions tomorrow. You will notice something. The first day may feel difficult. The second day, the openings become faster. By the third or fourth day, your mouth begins reaching for familiar structures automatically. That is exactly what you want. The goal is not memorization. The goal is faster access. Now here is another powerful version. Ask someone else to give you random questions. Do not know them in advance. That small uncertainty is useful because real conversations are unpredictable. If someone asks, what is something you regret? Begin. One thing I regret is. If someone asks, what would you do if you had 1 month free? Begin. If I had 1 month free, I would. If someone asks, what is the best advice you have received? Begin. One piece of advice that really helped me was, Notice again, the beginning gives the rest of the answer somewhere to go. You are building automatic response shapes. This is how fluent speaking becomes faster, not because you suddenly think 10 times faster, but because the first part of the answer no longer requires much thinking. Another important habit is learning to tolerate imperfect beginnings. Maybe you start a sentence and immediately realize there was a better way to say it. Do not restart everything. Continue. Suppose you say, I think people are sometimes too worried about what others think. You corrected yourself. Good. Move on. Do not punish the answer because the beginning was imperfect. The whole point of the 3-second rule is to create movement. If every small mistake sends you back to the beginning, the old fear returns. So protect the movement. Start, correct lightly. Continue. This also means you should stop trying to sound impressive in the first sentence. Your first sentence can be very simple. I think. For me. I would say. I don't really know, but. Those phrases may feel basic, but basic phrases can open very strong answers. Fluency is not about making the first 5 words beautiful. It is about making them available. Available English beats impressive English that never comes out. Another technique is the one-breath answer. Ask yourself a simple question and give the first part of the answer in one relaxed breath. What did you do yesterday? Yesterday I spent most of the day working. Then breathe. Continue. What do you enjoy doing? I really enjoy quiet activities like reading and walking. Then continue if you want. This teaches your mind that an answer does not need to arrive as one giant block. You can release one thought, breathe, and then add another. That makes direct speaking easier. There is another mistake to avoid. Do not count the 3 seconds with panic. This is not a race. The rule is not designed to make you rush. It is designed to stop unnecessary delay. The difference is important. Speak calmly, but begin early. Your voice can be slow. Your sentence can be simple. Your breathing can be relaxed. You are not trying to speak fast. You are trying to access English before translation becomes automatic. That is the real goal. Now practice with opinion questions, because these are especially useful. Do you think social media is good or bad? 3, 2, 1. I think it can be useful, but should people work from home? 3, 2, 1. I think it depends on the job. Is it better to live alone or with family? 3, 2, 1. For me, it depends on the stage of life. You see what is happening. The answer starts before the full idea is finished, and that is exactly what real conversation requires. You are thinking and speaking at the same time. This is the skill you need, not translation, not complete preparation, real-time construction. Now let us go even deeper. The 3-second rule also trains courage. Why? Because translation often becomes a hiding place. You tell yourself, I'm still thinking, but sometimes you are not really thinking. You are delaying because you are afraid the English will not be perfect. The 3-second rule gently removes that hiding place. It tells you, use what you have, begin, trust yourself, let the sentence grow. That is why the exercise can feel uncomfortable at first. You are not only breaking a language habit, you are breaking a fear habit. And every time you begin before feeling completely ready, you prove something to yourself. I can speak without controlling every word first. That realization is powerful. You start trusting your English in motion, and English in motion is very different from English on paper. On paper, you can edit. In conversation, you must continue. That is why learners who only practice perfect written answers often struggle in real speaking. They have trained control. They have not trained response. The 3-second rule trains response. So here is your challenge. For the next 7 days, answer 20 questions aloud every day. 10 easy questions, 5 opinion questions, 5 unexpected questions. Every answer must begin within 3 seconds. Do not restart unless the sentence becomes completely impossible. Do not translate deliberately. If you do not know what to say, begin with, I'm not completely sure but. If you need time, that's a good question. If you lose the idea, what I'm trying to say is, stay inside English. That is the only rule. At first your answers may feel rough. Then something changes. Your mouth begins to recognize the patterns. Your first sentence comes faster. The silence becomes shorter. The translation becomes weaker. And eventually, someone asks you a question in real life and something surprising happens. You answer immediately, not perfectly, but naturally. You do not hear the translation first. You do not build the answer in another language. English simply begins. That is the moment you are working toward. Because direct speaking is not created by forcing your mind to never translate again. It is created by making the English response arrive before translation has time to become necessary. So remember this whenever someone asks you a question. Do not wait for the whole answer. Do not wait for perfect grammar. Do not wait for perfect confidence. Give yourself 3 seconds. Then begin, because every fast beginning strengthens the direct path between meaning and English. And one day, that path will become so familiar that your answer will already be moving before translation even gets the chance to knock on the door. Chapter 6. Stop building whole sentences in your head and learn to speak in thought groups. There is another hidden reason translation becomes so powerful during English conversation. You are trying to build too much before you speak. Many learners believe they must prepare the complete sentence inside the mind first, check whether it sounds correct, make sure the grammar is safe, choose the right vocabulary, and only then open the mouth. That feels logical, but in real conversation it creates pressure. Because a full sentence is a lot for the mind to hold at one time, and when the sentence becomes longer, the problem becomes even worse. You may know exactly what you want to say, but while you are trying to hold the entire English sentence inside your head, one part disappears. Then you go back. You rebuild it. You translate again. You change the tense. You search for a better word. And suddenly the answer that should have taken 5 seconds is still trapped inside your mind after 15 seconds. This is why you need to stop thinking of English sentences as one giant block. Learn to speak in thought groups. A thought group is simply one small piece of meaning. You say one piece, then the next, then the next. This is much easier for the brain because you do not need to know the complete sentence before you begin. Imagine you want to say, I started learning English seriously 2 years ago because I realized that my English was stopping me from taking better opportunities at work. That is a long sentence. If you try to build the entire thing before speaking, translation may immediately appear. Instead, break it. I started learning English seriously. Pause. About 2 years ago. Pause. Because I realized that my English was limiting some opportunities at work. Now the sentence feels lighter. You only needed the next small piece, not the whole structure. This is one of the most important changes you can make if you want to answer without translation. You must learn to trust the next piece, not the complete answer, just the next piece. That is how real conversation moves. Think about walking. When you walk across a room, you do not calculate every step before moving. You take one step, then another, then another. Speaking should begin to feel the same way. But many learners try to calculate the entire journey before taking the first step. That is why they remain standing still. So from now on, when you have a long idea, stop asking, how do I say this entire sentence? Ask, what is the first small part? Then speak that. Suppose someone asks, why did you decide to change your job? Maybe your full answer is complicated. Do not prepare all of it. Start. I decided to change my job. That is the first thought group. Now your mind only needs the reason. Because I felt. Next thought group. That I wasn't learning anything new, then perhaps, and I wanted a different challenge. Look at what happened. The full answer appeared while you were speaking. You did not need to translate it before beginning. You created it in motion. That is the skill you want. Now let us make this even more practical. Use connectors as bridges between thought groups. Words like because, but, so, and. For example, the reason is, another thing is, what I mean is. These words are extremely useful because they keep the English road open. Imagine someone asks, why do you like working in the morning? You begin, I like working in the morning. Now use a bridge. Because, your brain now has time to find the reason. Because my mind feels clearer. Then add, and I can usually finish difficult work faster. You built the answer while speaking. That is exactly what fluent speakers do. They do not always know the full sentence in advance. They often know only the direction. Then the language develops piece by piece. This is where many learners misunderstand fluency. They believe fluent speakers have complete English sentences waiting inside the head. Not always. Very often, fluent speakers simply have fast access to patterns, connectors, and familiar chunks that allows them to keep moving while the next idea is still forming. This is why chunk-based speaking is so powerful. You are not translating word by word. You are retrieving groups of English that already belong together. For example, to be honest, at the same time. The main reason is, one thing I noticed, from my experience, I'm not completely sure what I'm trying to say is, these are ready pieces. When these pieces become automatic, your mind does not need to build every word separately. That reduces mental pressure, and less pressure means less translation. Let us compare two learners. The first learner thinks word by word. I think, maybe, this is, because. Every word feels like a separate decision. The second learner has ready chunks. I think the main reason is, that whole group comes out together. Now the brain can focus on meaning. That is a huge advantage. Your goal should be to collect useful chunks that can carry many different ideas, not just isolated vocabulary. Imagine you learn the phrase, one thing I really like about, now you can use it everywhere. One thing I really like about this city is the atmosphere. One thing I really like about learning English is the confidence it gives me. One thing I really like about working from home is the flexibility. Same chunk, different meaning. That is efficient speaking. Now let us talk about pausing. Many learners are afraid of pauses. They believe a pause makes them sound weak, so they rush. They try to produce the entire sentence in one breath. Then the mind becomes overloaded. Words disappear, grammar breaks, translation returns. But a calm pause can actually make your English stronger. Listen to the difference. I started learning English seriously about 2 years ago because I realized my English was limiting me at work. Now with thought groups. I started learning English seriously about 2 years ago because I realized my English was limiting me at work. The second version gives your mind more space, and it can sound more natural because your ideas are organized. The important thing is not to create long, frightened silences. Use short thinking pauses. Stay relaxed. Keep eye contact if you are speaking with someone, then continue. A pause is not failure. A pause is part of speech. You also need to learn how to pause without leaving English. Suppose you need a moment. Instead of silently translating, use a bridge phrase. Let me think. The main thing is, what I mean is, the reason I say that is, these phrases keep your mind inside English, and while you say them, the next thought group forms. This is one of the reasons fluent speakers appear calm even when they are searching for words. They know how to manage the gap. They do not panic inside it. Another important exercise is what I call the 4-part answer. Take any question and answer in 4 thought groups. First, answer. Second, reason. Third, example. Fourth, final thought. Question. Do you think people should exercise every day? First, yes, I think regular exercise is very important. Reason, because it helps people feel healthier and more energetic. Example, for example, even a short daily walk can make a big difference. Final thought, so I think consistency matters more than doing something extreme. That is a complete answer, and notice how easy it becomes when the structure is divided. You did not need the whole paragraph first. You only needed the next function. Answer, reason, example, final thought. This framework is powerful because many conversation questions can fit inside it. Question, do you prefer studying alone or with other people? Answer, I usually prefer studying alone. Reason, because I can focus better. Example, for example, when I study with other people, I sometimes get distracted. Final thought, although group study can still be useful when I need help. Again, the answer builds itself. This is exactly what you want. Now let us go deeper. Translation often happens because your first language produces a complete thought very quickly. Your mind then tries to copy that thought exactly into English. That is too difficult. Instead of copying the sentence, copy only the meaning, then divide that meaning into English thought groups. Suppose your native language thought is, I did not go because I was already very tired after work and I knew I would not enjoy myself anyway. Do not translate the exact structure. Think, first piece, I didn't go. Second, because I was already really tired after work. Third, and honestly, fourth, I knew I probably wouldn't enjoy it. That is direct English construction. You preserved the meaning without copying the original sentence word for word. This is a major step toward independence. Now I want you to practice something called expansion speaking. Start with a tiny sentence. I like mornings. Now expand it. I like mornings because everything feels quiet. Expand again. I like mornings because everything feels quiet and I can think more clearly. Expand again. I like mornings because everything feels quiet. I can think more clearly and I usually get more work done before noon. You are teaching your mind to grow an idea after it begins. This is incredibly important because many learners think they need the long sentence first. You do not. Start small, expand later. Let me give you another example. Start. I was nervous. Expand. I was nervous before the interview. Expand. I was nervous before the interview because I didn't know what they would ask. Expand. I was nervous before the interview because I didn't know what they would ask, but after the first few minutes, I started feeling more comfortable. This practice teaches your brain that long English does not need to appear all at once. It can grow. And when your brain learns that, translation becomes less necessary. Another excellent exercise is to take one idea and speak it in 3 levels. Level 1. I'm tired. Level 2. I'm tired because I didn't sleep well. Level 3. I'm tired because I didn't sleep well last night and I had to wake up early this morning. Do this with many ideas. I'm happy because, I'm happy because, and I disagree. I disagree because, I disagree because, for example. This builds automatic expansion, and automatic expansion is one of the strongest ways to keep conversation moving without translation. Now let us talk about long answers. Many learners become nervous when someone says, "Tell me more." That phrase creates pressure because they believe they have already used all their English. But if you think in thought groups, tell me more becomes easy. You simply add another piece. Suppose you said, "I really enjoyed the trip." Then they ask, "Why?" Add, "Because it was the first time I traveled alone." They ask, "What did you like most?" Add, "I think the best part was having the freedom to decide everything myself." They ask, "Was anything difficult?" Add, "Yes, at first I was nervous about finding my way around." This is how conversation grows. Not through one giant perfect answer, through small connected pieces. Once you understand this, real conversation becomes much less frightening. You no longer need to prepare everything. You only need to respond to the next piece. Another important skill is knowing how to restart a thought group when it becomes messy. Suppose you begin, "I think the reason why, because people, do not fight inside the broken structure." Stop calmly. Say, "Let me say that more clearly." Then restart with a simpler thought group. I think people struggle with this because they overthink. That is strong speaking. You did not translate. You did not disappear. You repaired the English from inside English. This is exactly the kind of flexibility you need. Now here is a powerful daily exercise. For 10 minutes, answer questions using only thought groups. Do not try to create long, perfect sentences. Question: what are your plans this week? Say, "This week," pause, "I need to finish some work," pause. Then I'm planning to, pause. Spend some time with my family, pause. And if I have enough time, pause. I'd also like to rest. That is excellent practice. You are learning to hold one small piece at a time. And as the thought groups become automatic, your pauses will naturally become shorter. Your speech will become smoother. But do not rush that stage. First build control, then speed will come. There is another reason this method works so well. Thought groups reduce memory pressure. When you try to hold a long translated sentence in your head, you are using a lot of mental energy just remembering the structure. That leaves less energy for pronunciation, listening, confidence, and meaning. But when you speak one group at a time, your working memory is much freer. You can focus on the person. You can notice their reaction. You can listen better. You can adjust your answer. That is real conversation. You are no longer trapped inside your own head protecting a sentence you prepared 10 seconds ago. You are present, and presence is essential for fluency. You should also practice chunks aloud until they feel physically easy. Do not only read, "The main reason is." Say it 20 times across different examples. The main reason is time. The main reason is money. The main reason is confidence. The main reason is convenience. Then, one thing I noticed was the difference in pronunciation. One thing I noticed was how quickly people responded. One thing I noticed was that I felt less nervous. Now the phrase becomes available. Your mouth knows it. Your mind recognizes it. And in real conversation, it can appear before translation. That is exactly what you want. Remember, automatic speaking is built from thousands of small pieces becoming familiar, not from memorizing thousands of giant sentences. This is why chunks, thought groups, connectors, and simple expansions are so valuable. They turn speaking into something manageable. So from today, stop demanding the full English sentence before you begin. Trust the first piece. Say it. Then trust the second. Say it. Use a connector. Add a reason. Give an example. Pause calmly. Continue. If the sentence becomes too complicated, simplify it. If the idea changes, change direction. If you lose the structure, restart in English, but keep moving. Because the moment you stop trying to carry the entire answer inside your head, something powerful happens. Your mind becomes lighter, your speech becomes more flexible, your pauses become calmer, and translation begins losing its purpose. You no longer need to build everything somewhere else before bringing it into English. You are building English where it belongs, in real time, one thought at a time, one group at a time, one sentence at a time. And that is when speaking stops feeling like translation and starts feeling like communication. Chapter 7. Build an English-only response routine until direct speaking becomes automatic. Everything you have learned so far will remain only an interesting idea unless you turn it into a daily speaking system, because understanding how to stop translating is not the same as teaching your mind to actually respond without translation when another person is standing in front of you and waiting for an answer. This final chapter is where everything comes together. You have learned to connect English directly to meaning instead of attaching every English word to another language. You have learned to build ready response patterns so your mind does not start from zero. You have learned to trust simple English before searching for impressive English. You have learned to bring English into ordinary moments of your day. You have learned to begin within 3 seconds before translation takes control. And you have learned to construct longer answers in thought groups instead of preparing complete translated sentences in advance. Now you need repetition strong enough to turn those skills into instinct. Because your real goal is not to spend the rest of your life reminding yourself, do not translate, do not translate, do not translate. If you have to fight translation every time you speak, the new pathway is still not automatic enough. Your goal is to practice direct English so consistently that eventually there is nothing to fight. A question arrives, meaning appears, and your English response begins. That is the level you are working toward. Think about how many things in your life once required complete attention but now happen almost automatically. When you first learned to use a phone, drive a vehicle, type on a keyboard, prepare a familiar meal, or perform any repeated task, every small action required conscious attention. After enough repetition, the brain stopped treating every step like a separate decision. Speaking can develop in the same way. At first, you may need to deliberately remind yourself to avoid translation, start simply, use an opening phrase, or break the answer into smaller thought groups. After hundreds of repetitions, those choices begin happening much faster. Eventually, the process becomes less conscious. That is why daily response practice is so powerful. Not because 20 minutes will magically make you fluent overnight, but because every response teaches your mind which pathway it should use next time. If you hear a question and translate it before answering, you strengthen the translation pathway. If you hear a question and respond directly in English, even with simple language, you strengthen the direct pathway. Your brain becomes efficient at whatever you repeatedly ask it to do. So if your speaking routine contains mostly silent grammar study, vocabulary memorization, reading and listening, but very little immediate English response, then your brain may become excellent at recognizing English without becoming equally fast at producing it. That is why some learners understand almost everything but still struggle when someone suddenly says, "What do you think?" They have practiced recognition much more than response. Now you are going to correct that imbalance. I want you to create what I call an English response routine, a short daily practice where the main purpose is not learning new information but making the English you already know easier to access. Begin with 5 minutes of direct observation. Do not open a textbook. Do not write translations. Simply look around you and allow English to attach itself to what is happening. If you are sitting in your room, think or say aloud, "The window is open, the room feels quiet, my phone is beside me, I need to finish something later, and I think I should clean this desk." Then move beyond description and include reactions. "I like the light in this room because it helps me focus, but it gets too warm in the afternoon, so I usually open the window." Notice how naturally the language begins expanding. You started with objects, but soon you were expressing preferences, reasons, problems, and decisions. That is exactly what you want, because conversations do not consist only of nouns and simple descriptions. They require you to connect ideas. After those first 5 minutes, move into the second part of your routine, quick personal questions. Ask yourself questions that do not require complicated knowledge. They should come from your actual life, because familiar meaning makes direct English easier to build. Ask, "What did I do this morning?" Then begin within 3 seconds. "This morning I woke up a little later than usual, so I had to get ready quickly." Ask, "What am I planning to do tonight?" And answer, "Tonight I need to finish some work, and after that I'll probably relax for a while." Ask, "What has been on my mind recently?" and respond, "Recently I've been thinking a lot about how I use my time because I feel that some parts of my day are being wasted." You are not memorizing answers. You are teaching your mind that a question can create English immediately. Now make the practice harder. Move from personal questions into opinion questions, because opinion questions force you to build language in real time. Ask yourself something like, "Do you think people spend too much time on their phones?" Do not prepare the whole answer. Begin, "Yes, I think many people probably do, because phones have become part of almost every moment of the day." Then add a second thought. For example, people sometimes check their phones even when they are sitting with family or friends. Then complete the answer. "I don't think phones are the problem by themselves, but I think people need to become more conscious about when they use them." You just built a complete opinion without translating an entire paragraph first. That is exactly the kind of practice that changes your speaking system. Now imagine doing 10 questions like this every day. The questions change, but the response patterns repeat. "I think," one reason is. For example, another thing is. So overall, those structures become deeply familiar. Your mind no longer needs to invent the architecture of an answer. It can focus on meaning. This is one reason fluent speakers can answer quickly. They have thousands of familiar language patterns supporting them, so their mental energy goes toward the idea instead of the structure. You can build the same advantage. The next part of your routine should be unexpected response practice. This is important because prepared English can create false confidence. You may become very comfortable answering questions you have practiced before, then suddenly freeze when someone asks something new. That does not mean your practice failed. It simply means your mind needs experience creating English under uncertainty. Write 30 questions and place them somewhere you cannot see them in advance. You can shuffle cards, use a random question list, or ask another person to choose one. Then answer immediately. Imagine the question is, what is one thing people often realize too late in life? That may not be something you have prepared. Your first instinct could be to translate. Instead, trust a simple opening. "I think one thing people often realize too late is that time is more valuable than they thought." Now continue. "When people are younger, they sometimes believe they have unlimited time, so they delay important things." Then add an example or final thought. You are not trying to produce a perfect philosophical answer. You are teaching your mind how to create language when the road has not already been prepared. This is where real conversational confidence comes from. Not knowing every answer. Knowing how to begin when you do not know the answer yet. That is a completely different skill. You should also practice situations where you disagree, because disagreement often creates translation pressure. When learners want to be polite and accurate at the same time, they begin mentally constructing complicated sentences. Instead, build ready disagreement patterns. Imagine someone says, "Working from home is always better than working in an office." Respond directly. "I understand why some people prefer it, but I don't think it is better for everyone because different people work well in different environments." That answer did not require advanced vocabulary. It required a ready structure. Now try another. "Social media is completely useless." Respond. "I wouldn't say it is completely useless, because it can be helpful for communication and learning, although I agree that people can waste a lot of time on it." Practicing disagreement teaches your mind to handle more realistic conversation, where you are not simply describing your routine but reacting to another person's ideas. Another important part of your routine is storytelling without translation. Stories are powerful because they force you to connect several events across time. Choose one simple experience. Maybe something funny happened yesterday. Maybe you missed a bus. Maybe you met someone unexpectedly. Maybe you made a mistake while working. Tell the story without writing it first. Begin simply. "Yesterday something funny happened while I was going to the shop." Then continue one thought group at a time. "I was walking normally when I suddenly realized I had left my wallet at home, so I turned around and went back." Then add what happened next. If you forget a word, describe it. If your grammar becomes messy, simplify. If you lose the exact timeline, use expressions such as "after that," "a few minutes later," "then," "eventually," or "in the end." Storytelling teaches you something extremely important. You do not need translation to hold a longer piece of speech together. You need connectors, sequence, familiar vocabulary, and confidence to continue. Now add recovery practice. Most learners practice ideal English. They rarely practice what to do when English goes wrong. That is a mistake, because real conversation is full of imperfect moments, so deliberately practice recovery. Begin answering a question, and then intentionally stop halfway. Maybe you say, "One thing I really enjoy about traveling is..." Actually, let me say that differently. What I really enjoy is discovering how people live in different places. You are teaching yourself that restarting is normal. Then deliberately pretend you forgot a word. Say, "Yesterday I bought the thing you used to..." I can't remember the word, but it keeps drinks hot for several hours. Continue the story. This practice is powerful because your fear of forgetting words begins decreasing. Your mind realizes, even if something disappears, I still have another route. And once your mind trusts recovery, it becomes less desperate to translate everything perfectly before speaking. Translation often comes from fear. You think, "I need to make sure this sentence is safe before I say it." Recovery practice teaches you something better. The sentence does not need to be completely safe because I know how to repair it. That changes the emotional experience of speaking. Now let us talk about English-only problem solving, because this is one of the strongest ways to develop direct thinking. Take a small real-life problem and think through it aloud in English. Maybe you need to organize your day. Say, "I have 3 things to finish today, but I probably don't have enough time to do all of them, so I need to decide which one is most important." Then continue, "The first task will probably take 2 hours, so I should do that before lunch." You are using English to make decisions. This is much deeper than translating sentences. English is becoming a tool for thinking. You can do the same with choices. Should I go out tonight or stay home? I'm a little tired, so staying home would probably be better, but I haven't seen my friends for several days. Now you are weighing options directly in English. This creates a powerful connection between language and reasoning. And the more frequently you reason in English, the less your mind believes it must create the reasoning elsewhere and then translate it. You should also practice English reactions, because many conversations move too quickly for translation. Someone tells you surprising news. You do not have 5 seconds to build a perfect reaction. You need expressions that appear immediately. "That's surprising. Really? I didn't know that. That makes sense. I can understand why. I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds difficult. I'm glad it worked out." These short reactions are incredibly important because they keep you active in the conversation. A learner who only practices long answers may still feel awkward because they do not know how to respond between those answers. Fluent conversation is full of tiny reactions. Build them until they become instinctive. When someone tells you something good, your English reaction should appear. When someone explains a problem, your English reaction should appear. When someone disagrees, your English response should appear. The faster these small responses become, the more your entire conversation begins feeling English first. Now add another level, follow-up questions. Conversation is not an interview where one person asks everything and you only answer. Real communication moves both ways. After answering, ask something back. Imagine someone says, "I started a new job last month." Respond, "That's great. How are you finding it so far?" Someone says, "I went to the mountains last weekend." Respond, "That sounds nice. Was it your first time there?" Someone says, "I've been studying English for 3 years." Respond, "That's interesting. What part of English has been the most difficult for you?" Follow-up questions force you to stay mentally present. You are not translating a prepared response. You are listening to meaning and reacting directly to it. This is one of the closest forms of practice to real conversation. You should also create what I call translation-free islands during your day. Choose small periods when you deliberately remain in English, not the whole day. That is unnecessary. Maybe 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. During those periods, if you do not know an English word, do not immediately search for a translation. Describe it. If you cannot express a complicated thought, simplify it. If you get stuck, restart, but stay in English. At first, you may feel limited. That is useful, because limitations force creativity. When your mind cannot escape into translation, it starts discovering how much it can already do with the English it has. You may be surprised. Many learners know far more usable English than they think. They simply never discover it because they translate too quickly. Every difficulty sends them immediately back to their first language. Remove that escape for a few minutes, and your English begins finding its own solutions. Now we need to discuss listening, because direct answering becomes much easier when you stop translating everything you hear. When someone asks you a question, do not try to create a written version of every word inside your head. Listen for the meaning. If someone asks, "What made you decide to start learning English seriously?" you do not need to mentally analyze what made you decide to start and every other word separately. Recognize the intention. They are asking for your reason. Once the meaning is clear, answer the reason. One of the main reasons was, this is direct communication. Listening for intention rather than translating individual words is a huge step. Practice this with videos or audio. Pause after a question. Do not repeat the question in your first language. Immediately answer it in English, even if the speaker was not talking to you. Turn every question you hear into response practice. This changes passive listening into active speaking. Imagine watching an interview and hearing, "What was the biggest challenge you faced?" Pause. Answer for yourself. "The biggest challenge I faced recently was," then continue. Now the content becomes your speaking gym. You are constantly strengthening question-to-response pathways. There is another important rule. Do not correct yourself while you are still building the first version of the answer unless the mistake destroys the meaning. If you say, "Yesterday I went to the market," a quick correction is fine. But do not stop for 10 seconds and analyze why the tense changed. Finish the answer. Correction belongs after communication. Otherwise, you create another delay loop that can quickly become translation. Your mind begins asking, "Was that correct? What is the rule? How would I say that in my language? What should the structure be?" And now the conversation has disappeared. Protect the flow first. Review later. At the end of your daily response routine, you can examine 1 or 2 mistakes, not 20. Choose one useful improvement. Maybe you noticed that you struggle to give reasons, then practice "because," "one reason is," and "the reason I think that is." Maybe you struggle to tell past stories, then practice "yesterday's events." Maybe you freeze when asked for opinions, then make tomorrow's session mostly opinion questions. This is intelligent practice. You are not attacking your weaknesses emotionally. You are identifying them and building specific responses. Now I want you to understand something that can protect you from frustration. Your translation habit will not disappear in a straight line. Some days English will come directly. Other days you will translate more. Sometimes simple questions will feel easy, but emotional or complicated topics will push you back toward your first language. That is normal. Do not interpret translation as failure. Ask instead, "Why did translation return here?" Maybe the vocabulary was unfamiliar. Maybe the idea was complicated. Maybe you felt pressure. Maybe you were tired. That information is useful. It tells you which pathway still needs more experience. Then practice that type of situation. If you translate when discussing your work, talk about your work in English every day for a week. If you translate when explaining feelings, practice emotional vocabulary and emotional stories. If you translate when someone disagrees with you, practice responding to different opinions. Every translation moment can become a map showing you what to strengthen next. Another powerful method is to repeat the same idea differently. This creates flexibility and stops you from believing there is only one correct English sentence. Suppose you say, "I didn't go because I was tired." Now say it another way. "I was too tired, so I decided to stay home." Again, "I thought about going, but I didn't have enough energy." Same basic meaning. 3 English roots. The more roots your mind has, the less it needs translation. Translation often happens when one route is blocked and you think there is nowhere else to go. Flexible speakers simply choose another road, so build alternatives deliberately. Take one idea and express it 3 ways. "I don't understand." "I'm not sure I understand what you mean." "Could you explain that another way?" "I'm busy." "I have a lot to do right now." "I'm in the middle of something." "I'm nervous." "I feel a little uncomfortable." "I'm not completely relaxed yet." Now your English mind becomes less fragile. One missing phrase cannot shut down the whole system. You should also practice speaking when you are slightly distracted. Real conversations rarely happen in perfect silence. Walk slowly while talking. Prepare tea while describing your plans. Organize your desk while telling a story. Look through a window while answering questions. The purpose is not multitasking for its own sake. You are teaching your brain that English can continue while normal life is happening. This makes English feel less like a performance. And that matters because translation often increases when speaking feels like an examination. If every practice session involves sitting perfectly still and concentrating intensely on grammar, your mind may connect English with pressure. Bring English into ordinary movement. Let it feel normal. Another exercise is to speak immediately after hearing a short English statement. For example, here. Many people feel more productive in the morning. Respond. I agree with that because I usually focus better earlier in the day. Here. Traveling alone can teach you a lot about yourself. Respond. I think that's true because when you travel alone, you have to make more decisions by yourself. Here. Technology has made communication easier but relationships more complicated. Respond with your opinion. This teaches your mind to move from English input directly to English output. That is exactly the pathway you want. English comes in. Meaning is understood. English goes out. No unnecessary middle language. Now let us build a complete 25-minute daily routine that you can actually follow. Spend the first 3 minutes describing your surroundings and current situation in English. Spend the next 5 minutes answering easy personal questions within 3 seconds. Spend another 5 minutes answering unexpected opinion questions. Then spend 5 minutes telling one story without preparing it. Spend 4 minutes practicing recovery, clarification, and disagreement phrases. Use the final 3 minutes to review what happened and speak one final confident answer without stopping. That is 25 minutes. You do not need 3 hours. You need repeated, focused, direct response. And there is one rule that matters more than all the others. During those 25 minutes, do not judge your success by how advanced your English sounds. Judge it by how directly English appears. Ask yourself, did I begin faster? Did I stay in English when a word disappeared? Did I simplify instead of translating? Did I create the next thought while speaking? Did I finish the answer? Those are the measurements that matter right now. You may make grammar mistakes while becoming less dependent on translation. That is okay. Accuracy can continue improving. Your immediate goal is to strengthen access, because having correct English hidden somewhere inside your memory does not help much if you cannot reach it while someone is waiting for you to speak. You want English available. You want English close. You want English connected directly to meaning, and the only way to create that availability is use, direct use, again and again. Now imagine what happens after 30 days of this routine. During the first week, you still translate frequently, but you begin noticing it sooner. During the second week, familiar questions start producing automatic openings. During the third week, you begin describing missing words rather than immediately returning to your first language. By the fourth week, certain conversations start feeling different. Someone asks, "How was your weekend?" Your answer begins before you think about grammar. It was actually really good. I spent most of Saturday. Someone asks, "What do you think about this idea?" You say, "I think it could work, but there are a few things we would need to consider." Someone asks something unexpected. Instead of silence, you respond, "I've never thought about that before, but I would probably say." And one day, after the conversation ends, you suddenly realize something. You never translated, not because you were aggressively stopping yourself, not because you repeated "think in English" inside your head. You simply did not need translation in that moment. The English route was faster. That realization is one of the most exciting moments in language learning, because it proves something important. Your mind is changing, the new pathway is becoming real, but do not stop there. Continue until direct English is strong enough to survive more difficult topics, faster conversations, emotional situations, disagreements, storytelling, and pressure. That is how automatic speaking grows, layer by layer. Situation by situation, response by response. And remember, your first language is not the enemy. You do not need to fight it, reject it, or feel frustrated when it appears. It has been your strongest communication system for years. Of course, your mind returns to it. Your job is simply to make English stronger through use. Imagine 2 roads. The first language road is wide because you have traveled on it thousands upon thousands of times. The English road may currently be narrower. Every direct English thought widens it. Every immediate response widens it. Every story told without translation widens it. Every missing word you describe instead of translating widens it. Every conversation you complete widens it. Eventually, English becomes a road your mind can enter quickly without stopping to ask for directions. That is fluency. Not the disappearance of every mistake. Not knowing every word. Not sounding perfect every second. Fluency is having a language available when you need it. So starting today, stop measuring your English only by what you know. Measure it by what you can reach. Stop asking only, how much vocabulary have I learned? Ask, how quickly can I use the vocabulary I already have? Stop asking, can I translate this idea perfectly? Ask, can I express this idea directly? Stop waiting until English feels completely natural before using it naturally. Natural speaking is created by use. Use creates familiarity. Familiarity creates speed. Speed reduces translation. And repeated direct response eventually creates automatic English. Your final challenge is simple. For the next 30 days, give your mind daily evidence that English can work without translation. Answer questions aloud. Describe your life. React to ideas. Tell stories. Make decisions. Explain missing words. Disagree politely. Ask follow-up questions. Speak before the full sentence is ready. Build one thought group at a time. And whenever your mind automatically translates, do not become angry with yourself. Simply notice it and ask, can I say the meaning directly in simpler English? Then continue. That one question can change your speaking. Because eventually the direct path becomes so familiar that you no longer need to consciously choose it. Someone asks a question in English and your mind understands the meaning immediately. An English opening appears, your mouth begins. The second thought arrives while the first one is being spoken. You add a reason, you give an example, you forget one word and describe it, you adjust one sentence and continue. And suddenly you are no longer translating English, you are using English. That is the transformation you have been waiting for. The goal was never to become a perfect translator between two languages. The goal was to become a speaker who can enter English directly. So build that pathway every single day until English no longer needs to travel through another language before reaching your voice. Build it until questions create responses. Build it until meaning creates English. Build it until simple thoughts become sentences, sentences become conversations, and conversations begin flowing without that exhausting translation process happening between every idea and every word. Because the moment English begins coming directly from meaning is the moment speaking stops feeling like a puzzle you must solve and starts feeling like something much more powerful, a language that finally belongs to your voice. Before you leave, remember this one truth. You do not become a direct English speaker by forcing your first language to disappear. You become one by giving English enough real use that your mind no longer needs translation for every sentence. For a long time, you may have believed the problem was that you did not know enough vocabulary, that your grammar was too weak, or that you needed to study much more before you could answer quickly. But very often the real problem was simply the route your thoughts were taking before they reached your mouth. The question came in English, your mind translated it, created the answer somewhere else, translated it back, checked it, corrected it, and only then allowed you to speak. That long road created hesitation. Now you know how to build a shorter one. Connect English directly to meaning, build familiar response patterns, trust simple English before searching for impressive English, bring English into ordinary moments of your day. Begin your answers before translation has time to take control. Speak in thought groups instead of preparing complete sentences, and practice direct responses every day until the pathway becomes familiar. But there is something very important I want you to remember when you begin practicing. Do not become frustrated when translation still appears. It probably will. You have used your first language for years, perhaps your entire life, so your mind is naturally going to return to the strongest pathway it knows. Your job is not to become angry with that pathway. Your job is simply to build another one until English becomes strong enough to stand beside it. Every time you look at something and think directly in English, you strengthen that pathway. Every time someone asks you a question and you begin within 3 seconds, you strengthen it again. Every time you forget a word and describe the meaning instead of immediately translating, you make it stronger. Every time you tell a story, give an opinion, explain a problem, make a decision, or react to something directly in English, you are teaching your mind one powerful lesson. English can work by itself, and that lesson becomes more believable every time you prove it with your own voice. So stop waiting for the magical day when you suddenly wake up thinking completely in English. Build that day. Build it with 5 direct thoughts this morning. Build it with 10 questions this afternoon. Build it with 1 story tonight. Build it with 1 conversation where you choose simple English instead of silence. Fluency is not created in one dramatic moment, it is created through thousands of small moments when your mind could translate but slowly learns that it does not have to. And one day, something beautiful will happen. Someone will ask you a question you were not expecting. You will understand it. Your mouth will begin answering. You will give your opinion, add a reason, tell a small story, maybe forget one word and explain it another way, and then continue as if nothing happened. The conversation will end, you will walk away, and only then will you realize, I never translated that. That moment will feel small to everyone else, but you will know how important it is, because that will be proof that English is no longer only something you study, it is becoming something your mind can use directly. So from today, do not ask yourself only, how much English do I know? Ask yourself, how quickly can I reach the English I already know? Do not ask, can I translate this perfectly? Ask, can I express the meaning directly? Do not wait for advanced vocabulary when simple words can carry the message. Do not wait for the complete sentence when the first thought is already ready. Do not wait for perfect confidence when your voice can begin now. Speak the English you have, use it until it becomes familiar, repeat it until it becomes fast, trust it until it becomes automatic. Because your goal is not to become someone who can translate beautifully inside the head. Your goal is to become someone who hears English, understands the meaning, and answers from that meaning directly. Question to meaning, meaning to English, English to voice. That is the shorter road. That is the road you are building now. And the more often you travel on it, the less you will need to think about the journey at all. Before you leave, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and write this sentence in the comments. I will answer in English without translating. Do not write it as an empty promise. Use it as your challenge. For the next 30 days, give your mind direct English every single day, and one day you will notice that the language you once had to translate has finally started arriving on its own.